Iron Monkey presents the Lazaretto Letters, a found collection of unmailed, handwritten letters from 1922. Episode 10, The Red Letter, Part 3. Today's letters are from Timothy Doyle, addressed to Thomas Callahan, Providence, Rhode Island, stamped, sealed, and unpostmarked. Letter 12, Thursday, June 8th, 1922. Dear Tom, I decided to discharge myself today. I cannot face Nurse Lenore without cowering in embarrassment. Everyone seems to be against me in this place. I have no friends here at all. I even find myself missing the old German fellow. He may have had a screw loose, but at least he spoke to me, and his stories were interesting. Speaking of which, I intend to make my way out through the tunnels. If the old man was telling the truth, I should be able to take the elevator all the way down and then find my way out from there. Luckily, the elevators have been updated to one of those new fancy push-button types that no longer require an operator. The area near the elevators is usually bustling, as it serves as a sort of lounge with coffee pots and magazines, but it is typically vacant during the late hours. The restroom will be my excuse for wandering about should anyone question why I'm up and about at that hour. Here's hoping I see you in person instead of another letter from this prison. Wish me luck. Doyle. Letter 13. Friday, June 9th, 1922. Dear Tom, my escape plan failed, but I have a doozy of a story for you. Last night, I waited until after midnight when things grew quieter and the halls emptied out. I took a casual stroll toward the restroom, passing the elevators to be certain the coast was clear. One fellow was leafing through a stack of magazines, but when I returned a short while later, the area was empty. I pressed the button to summon the elevator. Its noises must usually fade into the background of the hospital, for I had never truly noticed them until that moment. The whirring of the motor, the rattling of the cables, and the clanking of the metal cage as it rose toward my floor were deafening. To cap it all, the door opened with a loud ding that echoed down the corridor. Whatever this venture was, it was anything but clandestine. It did not seem to draw any attention, and I told myself the elevators must be used by the staff regularly. Even so, stepping inside felt like sealing my own fate. I pressed the unmarked button at the bottom of the panel, and the door rattled shut as though I were being enclosed in a tomb. My next concern was the main lobby. I knew I would pass it on the way down to the lowest level, and I dreaded being intercepted by some curious nurse. The elevator crept along at a wretched pace, and my mind raced to come up with an excuse if the doors opened and someone accused me of trespassing. I really don't know if it was the crawl of the descent or if I traveled deep, deep underground, but it felt like an eternity until it finally came to a stop. It sat there for a moment, and I half expected someone to unhappily greet me as the door opened. To my surprise, the door opened and I was facing a large, tiled lavatory. Or so it seemed. I poked my head inside and, to my relief, the room was empty. To my horror, I quickly realized it was a morgue. The stench of chemicals and disinfectants was thick enough to taste. Rows of gurneys filled the far side of the room. Thankfully, they were empty. To the left stood a wall of square steel drawers, which I assumed contained cadavers. I was not about to check. A door to the right was locked tight, so I crossed the room in search of another exit and slipped out through an unlocked door. I emerged into a small room that led to a set of steps descending into a storeroom. There was no mistaking it now. These were the underground tunnels he'd spoken of. The air carried a hollow heaviness reminiscent of holding a seashell to one's ear. I passed a boiler room and then entered a long corridor that led to more steps and another locked door. An open doorway to the left revealed still more stairs descending and yet another corridor beyond. It was then that I became aware of how far underground I must be. If the lights were to fail, I would be swallowed by complete darkness. Not the sort your eyes can adjust to, but a total void of all light. I noticed the door on my right that was different from the others. It was barred, like a jail cell. At first, I assumed it was simply a room, but it soon became apparent that it was another corridor beyond the bars. Far in the distance, a light flickered. I waited for my eyes to adjust, but I could not fully make sense of what I was seeing. It appeared to be a wavering light, perhaps a lantern swinging back and forth, visible only every few seconds. Along with it came a low, metallic rumble that echoed through the passage. Whatever it was, it seemed to be moving toward me, slowly and steadily. I was more intrigued and frightened, at least at first, until a loud howl came from that flickering light and echoed down the corridor. I jumped back and hit the back of my head on the wall behind me. In a panic, I turned and ran deeper into the tunnel, hoping to find a way out. I passed the door on my right, but kept running, as stairs ahead of me led up instead of down. This took me to a T in the tunnel. I turned left, as it seemed to be the opposite direction of that howling light. I finally hit a dead-end storage room, but this one was different. It was filled with domestic items, not industrial ones. As I was about to turn back, I noticed a door marked with a snake and staff. I believe it to be a medical symbol, and for a moment, I thought I'd somehow found my way back into the hospital. I slowly opened the door, but it led only to more staircases and doors. The last one was different. All the others in the tunnels were made of thick metal. This one was wooden. I turned the knob and slowly began to open the door. It was dark on the other side, not pitch black, but darker than the harsh lighting of the tunnel. I opened it further, and what I saw surprised me. It was a room, like one in a home, and I faced a window beyond a small table and a pair of chairs. I was struck by the smell of something delicious, perhaps a roast. I poked my head inside and looked to my right, realizing I was in a kitchen. Beyond it, I could see into another room where someone sat reading a newspaper. Music played somewhere nearby, though so faint I could scarcely hear it. As I stood there motionless, someone walked past the seated figure, and the newspaper dropped into her lap. It was a woman. They were both women, and at once I knew I was somewhere I had no business being. I turned back toward the door and whack! I knocked something over, perhaps a broom or some such thing, but I knew it was loud enough to alert them. I managed to close the door slowly and as silently as I could, and then I ran like mad. Luckily, I did not lose my way, and I had a fair idea how to get back. Right, left, right. I suppose I was less than halfway when I had to stop and sit from sheer exhaustion. I sat there, taking deep, gasping breaths, when a nearby sound stopped my breathing altogether. It was that same howling, joined by the metallic clattering I'd heard before. I scrambled back to my feet and moved as quickly as I could, passing the barred doors without looking. Even so, I caught a glimpse of something. It was much nearer than before. I can only describe it as pale and low to the ground, with a flickering light attached to whatever it was. It gave me the chills, and also a sudden burst of energy that carried me back to the morgue. I sat outside the door, dizzy and wheezing. I was about to gather myself when a loud metallic slam from inside stopped me cold. Someone was in the morgue. I heard the rolling sound of a gurney, followed by the opening and closing of a heavy metal door. I thought perhaps whoever was there had exited through the door near the elevator. Silence. I did not know whether it was safe or not, but I could tell my wheezing was about to turn into a coughing fit, so I made a break for it. I opened the door, rushed to the elevator, and pressed the button. To my distress, the doors did not open, but instead summoned the car from a higher floor. The mechanism shook and rattled as it began its slow descent. Like a cruel joke, the journey seemed to tease me in its reluctance. In futility, I tried to hurry it along by jumping up and down. I was stopped short by a sound behind the door beside me. 1,000 excuses raced through my mind, and I nearly resigned myself to whoever I imagined bursting through that door. When at last, the elevator arrived and the doors opened. I jumped inside and pressed my floor's button 10 times, but nothing seemed to happen. I felt relief as I watched the door slowly begin to close, and at last I was able to draw a deep breath. It was only inches from closing when long, pale fingers slipped inside and forced it back open. The door opened to reveal a man in a white coat I'd never seen before. I scrambled to think of something to say, and before I could, he sternly stated, "You're not supposed to be here." Words failed me. Every excuse that raced through my mind moments before was suddenly gone, and all I managed to say was, "Sorry." This was probably the best thing I could have said, as he simply dismissed me and replied, "Well, you'd better get back to where you belong." I just nodded and pressed the button again. The man in the white coat gave a small nod in return and retreated back into the morgue. After an awkwardly long wait, the door finally closed and I began my ascent. It seemed egregiously slow and unbearably loud, and I dreaded it stopping on the first floor at the nurse's station. But to my relief, it continued onto my floor, where I exited and retreated to my room. I felt like a teenager as I leapt into bed and wrapped myself in my covers. The events of the night raced through my mind, but I eventually came to the conclusion that though it had been an interesting adventure, it was not my way out of this place. After stewing for a relatively short time, I fell asleep and slept through breakfast. I woke up feeling relieved, but it quickly gave way to panic as the thought of receiving a red letter or facing Nurse Lenore came rushing back to me. Doyle. Letter 14, Saturday, June 10th, 1922. Tom, I feel this is a hopeless situation. I'm fairly certain everyone knows about my escape plan now. They're all watching me. I entered the nurses' dormitories in the night, and I'm afraid the police will appear, or else a red letter will seal my fate and it will take me away to God knows where. I keep thinking about that section of the tunnels with the prison bars, and about that thing that was down there. Maybe it was a patient who received a red letter and was imprisoned. Maybe it was the German, and they did something to him and took away his ability to speak. Maybe I should have tried to help instead of running in fear. Then it occurred to me that it was probably a trap. Why was it so easy for me to get down there at all? I'm not falling for it. I will never go down there again. They'll have to kill me first. I do not think I can endure another day of this torture, let alone another week. Last night, I dreamt I was walking in white sand. It was cool beneath my feet, yet it stretched out like a desert. Sand began to pour down upon me from a single point in the sky. I tried to run, but was stopped by a wall that could be felt, though not seen. The sand grew deeper around me, making it harder to move, and when I looked up, the bright sun glimmered overhead, its light refracting strangely. It took me a moment to understand that I was inside a giant hourglass, with puffy clouds reflected in the glass above. By the time the realization came, the sand was already up to my chest and falling faster. I could no longer look up, as it filled and burned my eyes like boiling water. I tried to scream, but the sand poured into my mouth and I began coughing as I was slowly enveloped in darkness. I strained even to cough, frozen and entombed in sand. I woke in a panic. I could not move. I could not breathe. I lay on my back, convulsing, my eyes bulging as though they might burst from their sockets. With what felt like my last strength, I managed a low, drawn-out grunt, an exhalation. It seemed an eternity passed before I could draw in any air at all. It took minutes before my breathing returned, ragged and gasping. I would have burst into tears, but there were none to shed. I staggered out of bed in search of something to drink, anything at all, for it felt as though every drop of fluid had been drained from my body. I found a glass of water and drank it, warm. Or rather, I threw my head back and poured it in, my lips useless, my tongue dried hard as leather. I managed to steady myself long enough to find a small pitcher, which I emptied completely, then crawled back into bed and wept. That dream. I know it was symbolic, but I also believe it was prophetic. I fear my time is running out. Doyle. Letter 15. Saturday, June 10th, 1922. Tom, I woke from that horrid dream only to find myself returned to a living nightmare. My anxiety grows each time someone passes my room, which is constant, so you can imagine the state I'm in. I'm absolutely terrified of receiving a red letter. Every person is a potential executioner. Every approaching footstep feels certain, as though this will be the moment. This will be the messenger who delivers my final judgment. The only solace I find at all is by my window, watching the sea, the sky, and the rocks below. Birds come and go, they dip and rise again. They circle without a care in the world. Oh, to be as free as a bird, if only I could. Tom, he's here, the well-groomed man. I'm signing off now so I can focus on hiding or somehow avoiding him. I won't be taken. Doyle. Letter 16. From Lenore Driscoll, addressed to Patricia Stevenson, Rochester, New York, stamped, sealed, and unpostmarked. Saturday, June 10th, 1922. Dear Patty, remember the cute Irish boy I was telling you about? Well, it appears he climbed out his window and leapt to his death this afternoon. He was certainly a troubled soul, but it is such a tragedy, as he was on the mend. Ironically, he was to be given his red form today, the paperwork that would have officially discharged him. What a cruel twist of fate. Yours, Lenore. The Lazaretto Letters, a found collection of unmailed, handwritten letters from 1922. Produced and distributed by Iron Monkey. To share your reflections, lend your aid, or explore the mysteries of the Lazaretto Letters, visit Iron Monkey at enterthemonkey.com. Thank you for listening.